My name is Jason J. Rock Houston, and this is Guitarist TV. We're talking today with guitarist Aaron Robinson from the band Blood of Angels. Welcome to the show, Aaron. How long has the band been together?
We've been together since 2015, so yeah, 7 years now.
Okay, so I understand you guys are from Tampa, Florida. Is there much of a metal scene there these days?
Yeah, it's pretty solid locally. Of course, we have the legends that everyone knows:
Yeah.
Cannibal Corpse, Deicide, Morbid Angel, Malevolent Creation, Monstrosity. The list goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as the local scene goes, it's thriving. It's solid. It's evolved.
That's good to
It's
hear
adapted.
because in prepping for today's interview, I was listening to the latest single, which is Spillage. It's been out quite a while, but I was listening to that and kind of a thought that came to my mind, I can honestly say, is boy, this band could give Slayer a run for its money. I mean, the vocals are just kind of really high up there, but it's great stuff.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Yeah, that's an incredibly high compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the fact that Slayer's not, Slayer's kind of called it a day. They're not doing any more shows or releasing it. It's almost kind of like you guys could be almost they passed the torch to you guys. I think the music's that good.
Thank you. I mean, yeah. I like to think that we might be able to fit a void in that category.
Yeah,
Like people that really miss Slayer may be like, oh well, here's a band that gives me that same feeling.
And again, I don't want to put it out there that you guys are like a Slayer clone band or anything. I just make that comparison because to me the vocals are so kind of high, and I really haven't heard a lot of people. I mean, of course, got Halford, Ryan James Dio, Bruce Dickinson, but I've heard a lot of people since Slayer kind of do what Slayer does. I mean, that's kind of what they were known for, and I think again, what's unique in listening to your band is, while you kind of remind me of that, the band has a uniquely kind of sound all its own. I think that's very hard to do these days.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we really pull from a lot of different subgenres. I mean, we love death metal as much as we love like black metal, as much as we love thrash, power metal. I'm as big a fan as I'm Maiden, as I am as Cannibal Corpse, as I am a Dark Tranquility and Immortal. And I try to bring it all together.
It's interesting you say that because power metal, death metal, black metal, it's all definitely metal, but different, as you say, subgenres. And it's funny that everybody has their own definition of what metal is. I mean, you might chuckle when I say this, but I remember, like back in the 80s, a lot of people even called Bon Jovi metal because he had long hair. I mean, that was just what was thought of as heavy metal back then. And it's kind of funny to see what that definition has turned into these days. And again, depending on who you're talking to, it means something different.
Very true. Well, I mean, it's a big tree.
Yeah.
I mean, I think most of us can agree it all started with Black Sabbath.
Oh, sure.
Maybe the MC5,
Yeah.
Mountain, Zeppelin, even though they don't want to be called metal at all.
Yeah.
But, and Jimi Hendrix, and it really grew from there. And of course, from Motorhead, I mean, the tree really grew more into the underground direction with a lot of punk influences. I mean, I think there's room for all of it. And yeah, and even the Cinderella and Wasp and and Motley Crue and Rat and those bands too. It was heavy and it had an edge for that period of time.
Sure. I mean, like even you go to back to Rat's 1983 EP, it's very different from what they're what they were doing on their last studio album a couple years back. But it was a lot heavier. But again, that was just who they were at the time. And I think you're so right. There's room for everybody, and if we're honest, I mean, all music, any kind of music really that we listen to these days has its root like in in stuff like B.B. King, Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry. I mean that's the true roots of rock and roll, if you go all the way back.
Yeah, I mean, actually, if you really want to get into it, I'd say Robert Johnson.
There you go. Yeah.
His blues and in the 1920s. It's I mean, the whole mythos of him selling his soul to the devil.
There you go.
That rebelliousness right there. That's really where it all stems from, mostly.
Oh, sure. Now, being the guitar player, I was curious, who were the guys that influenced you growing up? Who would be your guitar heroes?
Randy Rhoads is number one for me.
Okay.
He's the reason why I even picked up the guitar. I mean, my dad was a big rock guy. Blue
Yeah.
Oyster Cult, Black Sabbath, Zeppelin, Three Dog. My dad was really into that stuff. And as it got heavier, my dad got heavier as a fan. So he brought home the Randy Rhoads tribute album,
Oh,
and
wow.
when I heard that, and I heard that the playing, I wanted to play guitar. I wanted to play guitar like that. I also
Randy
love
Rhoads.
Kerry King. For that you brought up Slayer, and Dino Cazares from Fear Factory.
Oh,
He's
wow.
he's the reason why I picked up a 7 string.
Yeah, I always love to talk to people who are influenced by Randy Rhoads because there's no denying what a great musician he is. I mean, I've heard Ozzy even say over here that Randy Rhoads was the guy that really, for the first time in his life, taught him how to sit down and write a song. Because if you notice, a lot of the guys in Ozzy's solo band, a lot of them are great songwriters. Zach Wild, Randy Rhoads, even the drummer Randy Castillo, Mike Inez, and and the thing is about Randy Rhoads, it always amazes me is I don't doubt for a minute because I've heard what he's done. Those two great Ozzy albums, the tribute album you mentioned, all great stuff. But what amazes me is, he died so tragically young, of course, at I think 24, 25, something like that. And he really has only got those two Ozzy albums. I mean, that is the guy's legacy. And yet, looking at a little bit of a lifespan he had, how many people he has influenced. Look at his legacy. It's just amazing. It's not like he has,
Mhm.
a 10 or 20 album, catalog. It's just amazing that what he was able to do in such a short amount of time.
He was a real student of the instrument. I mean, he was a guitar teacher by profession.
Sure.
While he was playing in Quiet Riot, of course, before the Ozzy
Yeah, yeah,
albums. Unlike a lot of musicians, I mean, not to take anything away from like Paul Stanley and Ace Frehley and
sure,
those,
sure.
those guys were basically like 3 power chords, with some blues and a
Yeah,
little bit of blues screening, and then they'd rock it out. But Randy was a real student of theory. He was and he really brought a lot of those classical elements into rock and roll that
well,
really
see,
did
that's
not
the thing.
exist prior to him.
That's the thing that a lot of people don't even realize about Randy Rhoads is I've even heard Ozzy talk over years that Randy wasn't a big metal fan or even rock fan. He was more into classical music, and of
Hmm.
course, getting the Ozzy gig, he and being able, like you said, being a student of music, he kind of knew how to do all different types of music. And I think that's probably a big reason why he did influence so many people because he was a student of music and he was able to, he studied different types of music. He was more than just a one trick pony. And I think oftentimes those are the best musicians. I mean, when you can do more than one thing, it might help you get a gig, like we're saying, Randy Rhoads wasn't necessarily a huge metal fan, but those are the type of gigs he was getting, and so um, he was able to kind of put his classical, influence of music into what he was doing with Ozzy.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. I mean, it was very revolutionary, and then everybody to a degree has been chasing it ever since.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's amazing. I've heard people talk over years that apparently there's a huge rivalry, in the late '70s between Eddie Van Halen and Randy Rhoads. They weren't big fans of each other, but I guess that had more to do with the fact that they were competing against one another. Um,
Yeah, and I mean, it wasn't the documentary that even Randy Rhoads' guitar students came up to Randy Rhoads to ask him how to play certain Van Halen riffs that were
yeah,
a thing of the were a bit of the time.
yeah. In fact, I've heard over years David Lee Roth talk about how he used to tell Eddie, "Hey, Ed, when you're up there on stage, don't let them see how you're, don't let them, let the audience see what you're doing up there on there."
Yeah, turn your back to the
Turn your back.
audience. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Um,
heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, being the guitar player, I'm sure you're very involved with the songwriting, but I was curious, when Blood of Angels sits down and you guys get in that creative mode and writing some new tunes, does it typically start with, a guitar riff or like, do you work equally with the vocalist, coming up with the lyrics? What's the songwriting process like for you guys?
It's evolved. On the because I from the first EP I had to change the lineup entirely.
Okay.
I kind of had an album going into it when I got with Jonathan, Randy, and Maggot, and I got them, as basically the permanent lineup
Uh,
that's together today. So in the beginning, I pretty much had a lot of control, and I did a lot of the writing and the lyrics and everything, and just kind of dictated it. But that's because we were all new together. I didn't, I you know, I knew their strengths because I've seen them around the scene. But working with them, I wasn't 100% sure, so I had a lot of control. But after being together with this lineup for 4 years, we know each other's strengths and weaknesses very well. We communicate very well. We have a really great relationship as people. The ego is completely out the door. And so with this new album, with Spillage as being part of the beginning of that, and the new album that's coming with the songs we've written so far, it's very collaborative. Most of the time it does start with me on the guitar. But Randy has really picked up the heavy lifting in the lyrics, and we bounce back and forth on arrangement ideas. I just come in with a skeleton, and then we work on the arrangements together, and Randy puts his lyrical interpretation on it.
And now, do you think it was more ego or more of the fact that you wanted to kind of be in control? Because I'm assuming, being that you're the founding member of a band, it's kind of like your baby. You want to get it off the ground, and nobody knows better maybe how to steer the ship than you. Or was it hard to kind of give up that control, or was it just a matter of seeing what these guys could do?
No, it wasn't hard. It wasn't hard to give it that kind of control at all. Yeah, and it really was, really getting to know these guys, and and who they are and where their talents lie and things like that. So once that first album was done, once we did our initial tours, and knowing where we all stand, knowing each other more personally, having that real bond, that real relationship that a band really needs to move forward. Yeah, it's much easier for me to take a step back and and let other people come in.
No, because that could go one of two ways. Typically, I mean, on one hand, if you're controlling everything, you got the freedom to kind of do whatever you want, and everything is in your control. But then again, if something doesn't go right, or maybe the album's not selling like you hoped it would, or whatever, or people aren't coming to the shows, then maybe a lot of that falls on you. Is, oh well, this is the guy in control. He tells us what to do. We're just the guys in the band. But I would think on the flip side, doing it the way you're doing now, it's a much more collaborative effort. And then, I mean, if you look at all the great bands in history, like Joe Perry, Steven Tyler, Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, Paul McCartney, John Lennon, all these great songwriting teams. I mean, and I think there's a reason for that. I think a lot of times when you have more than one person that can, for example, write it, or as a songwriter, everybody gets to feel like they're contributing, and I think it makes for a much happier band.
Yeah, I mean, if it can work that way, and like you said, like you brought up before, like the sales or attendance. I don't really. I think the most important thing is that we're happy as a band.
Yeah, sure.
Doing what we do, and if I mean, I'm kind of a little bit in the old school thinking, because I am on the older side of things. My interpretation is that we're going to create the art that we want to create, and if people love it, great. If they don't love it, that's okay too.
Yeah,
because we're not going to pander, to people's whims and things.
I mean, I'm an old school guy myself, so I love to hear that, because and what I mean by that is, I mean, you guys are kind of new band, so you do still have to put out new music, but you could get to the point where, like everybody else, you say, okay, you know what? Nobody's buying CDs like they used to, so why bother writing any new music? We'll just go out, we'll do shows, we'll just play the catalog of music we have. But I dig the fact that you guys are still in that creative mode. And like I said, you're kind of in a place where you kind of have to, but you don't really have to. You could put, okay, maybe every 6 months we'll release a new song. But I'm kind of old school mode. I like getting the full package, getting a full album. I talk to people who tell me I don't even buy CDs when a new piece of music comes out. I'll just buy maybe the latest single for 99 cents. And when we were growing up, the thing was to support your band, go out and get the new album. And they came to your town. You go to the concert, you buy a T-shirt, you get a program. You support the band.
Yeah, and really, I mean, I was kind of surprised. I mean, from our record label, they give us CDs when we released the album. And so I was selling them at the merch booth, and I was really pleasantly surprised the amount of people that still, that really wanted that physical CD. I was like, well, we'll have them on the booth. We'll see what happens. But yeah, there were a lot. Even people are telling me it's like I don't have a CD player,
Yeah.
but I just really wanted to collect a physical copy. That's
Yeah.
okay,
I
great.
mean,
That's
I
great.
think like anything in life, it's all about giving people choices. And what I mean by that, I do think if more bands were to kind of follow a model you guys are following, whereas a lot of times you go see a band, they don't even have their CD at the merch table. Oh, you can go online and get it. Whereas I think to give them the option, hey, yeah, we got some CDs here. Okay, here, oh, okay, yeah, well, I won't have to go online now. I can go to the concert. I can listen, I can buy a CD here, listen to it on the way home in the car. I like to kind of have that souvenir when I go see a band live. It's kind of like a president get up on TV and telling people, oh well, if gas is too much, just buy an electric car. Well, I like my car I have. I don't want to be told what to do. Maybe give me a choice. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, and so I think you're following the right. I mean, you mentioned Iron Maiden earlier in the interview. One of my all-time favorite bands. I bring them up because I remember as a kid, I even really knew anything about who Iron Maiden was, seeing Number of the Beast in the record store, and just being in such awe of the beautiful artwork. Like, what the hell is this? I don't know what this is, but I got to have it.
I have a lot of friends that, I mean, we're Maiden heads, I mean, anytime Maiden's like anywhere near Florida or, I mean, we're at the show, and we all have that same thing. When we were kids, we all went to the record store and we saw that cover work. We didn't know what was in it because, Maiden didn't get anything for radio support. They still don't get anything for,
Yeah.
for commercial radio support, but you saw that cover, like in UK, the Number of the Beast. For me, the first one that blew my mind when I was a little kid was Power Slave. The Eddie and the Sphinx and the Pyramid, and I'm like, I had to know what was inside, and then what was inside was to me golden. And then of course,
sure.
you buy the back catalog, and then Somewhere in Time came out, and I had to get that one too. And then you see them live, and
I mean, the only thing I can really equivocate
the same way.
It's saying like a Kiss album. I mean, for the very first time, and just loving the artwork and having to get it. I mean, so much to the fact that like Kiss and Iron Maiden, the one thing they have in common, great imagery. Like you could pick up any Iron Maiden album, and Eddie can look however Eddie wants to look for that year. But if you notice, Iron Maiden has not once on a single album ever put the band's photo. The band is sometimes on the back cover, but a lot of people don't even know what Iron Maiden looks like, unless you really follow them over years. It just know that, oh, that's Eddie. That's the mascot Eddie. They know him from artwork. And the artwork is so impressive that a lot of people even know the original guy that did all that great Eddie artwork was this guy, Derek Riggs,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
it counts for a lot. And I mean, I have to say that's part of in my opinion, the secret of
the success
right now.
Yeah.
Well, Ghost is doing so well, or or Slipknot in the early day. They had a thing that nobody else was doing. Like one of the things I'm happy with, like the art guy we've been working with for the last couple of singles we released. Sla Muerte. I mean, he's from Indonesia, and he does just really cool stuff. And and I'm really excited. And I mean, we already got the cover for the next album.
Yeah.
And I love it. It looks great, and
you have to give me a dollar amount, but somebody was telling me like same type of thing, that they found this great guy like in Indonesia to do their artwork for their album covers, and they're like these guys, these artists like from Indonesia and India, from these other countries, they do great artwork, and they don't realize what it is really worth, and they don't charge very much, but they do great artwork, and so that's kind of interesting too, because like you're getting somebody to create art for your album cover. And yet, because of that, somebody is going to maybe learn about this guy who does this beautiful artwork,
Yeah, well, I mean, he's done some stuff for some pretty big bands. He's also done work for Lamb of God and Cattle Decapitation.
So again, you're in good company. Yeah.
We're in good company. Yeah. I mean, he showed, here's the latest thing I did from Lamb of God, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah. This is the guy who does my stuff. So.
I mean, that's an interesting like footnote in an interview like this, And so, Aaron, I was curious, how old were you when you first started playing the guitar? And I would love to ask people, what was it since you're a guitar player, about the guitar, why did you choose that as your instrument?
I was 10,
Okay.
and it's when I began. Why I chose the guitar? Because it was the instrument that it was. Well, drums have become more prominent in metal than it used to be, when I was a kid. But that was the instrument that was right up front. I never
Yeah.
really had a desire to be the singer. But to me, that was like the next best thing, was being the guitar player.
Well, yeah, I mean, it really is, because if you think about all the great bands that we probably grew up over years, I mean, typically the two guys they probably get the most attention in the band are the singer and the guitar player, and those are the guys typically that are involved with the songwriting. Typically, like you're saying, it'll start off with a guitar riff, and then the singer might come in and do his thing. And
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
and so
Although I'll give many props to our bassist Maggot. The guy's a virtuoso.
yeah, oh
Right,
yeah,
seriously, yeah. Seeing him live in a video and what he does. Yeah, I mean, the way we play off each other, but I mean, what he brings to the table is absolutely incredible.
I mean, it sounds like it almost sounds like you're saying that I love the fact that you're giving praise to all the guys in the band, because I believe no matter what band we're talking about, everybody has a story to tell. Everybody in any given band brings something to the table. I mean, take a band like Motley Crue. Mick Mars just left the band, and as great of a guitar player as John Five might be, I think he's one of the few people that can maybe step in there and do a decent job. But in spite of all that, it's going to sound a little different because he's not Mick Mars, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, very true, very true. Well, he doesn't have that. I mean, he's playing somebody else's creation.
Oh, sure.
And then and it's a lot different when you have the
Yeah.
original writer up
Yeah.
there doing it
Sure.
compared to the next guy in line.
Yeah.
Or the next lady in line.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was reading that you guys, like at the 5th annual Entertainment and Music Award, you got nominated for like the best metal band. That's pretty big honor, huh?
Yeah, no, actually, we won that year. Yeah, yeah, Metal Band of the Year. That was pretty cool.
Oh.
The 16th Annual Independent Music Awards. That was a few years ago now, but that was the real big one. That was in Lincoln Center in New York City, and yeah, we won Best Metal and Hardcore Song too that year.
Congratulations! So. I mean, how do you guys get nominated for? Does somebody at the record company nominate you guys? Does somebody from that organization nominate you? How does that all work?
No, I mean, I just put in the submission form.
Oh wow!
And and then I got an email that we got nominated, and I'm like, okay, show up to the award show. All right, that's cool. And then then we won. I think the Independent Music Award was the one that really surprised me most, because there were a lot of submissions. I mean, at the after party afterwards,
Yeah.
I mean, I'd have to say winning. I'll just say winning is probably the greatest feeling ever, because
sure.
everybody wants to hang out with the winner at the after party.
Yeah.
So but I got to talk to some of the organizers, the awards afterwards, after the ceremony was all over. And for our category, they said there were roughly like 5,100 submissions for it.
But can you imagine? I mean, however many got in the final cut. I mean, that's quite an honor right there.
Yeah.
Because as they always say, it's nominated just to be honored. But then, like you said, to win, and the fact that it's not a mainstream band like Metallica or Slayer, like we were talking about earlier. You guys are an upcoming band, and I love that when bands that are kind of on the rise get that nod or that thumbs up.
Yeah, well, and and the fact that I looked it up, that 4 years before we won that award, Five Finger Death Punch won the same thing in 2014. So I was like, well, and look at their success. So maybe it might rub off. I hope.
Yeah.
At least in the success level, not in the style of music.
And so I was reading on your Facebook page. I don't know if you're a truck driver, you study to be. That's pretty cool. Talk a little bit about that.
I did that for a while. Yeah. Mostly I did a lot of local stuff. The last job I had was working for a plumbing supply company. So yeah, CDL driver. Me and Jonathan, our drummer, we both had the same profession.
Wow.
Now I do Uber full time when I'm not on the road.
And so how often do you guys go on the road? Do you do like local, like weekend shows and stuff, or do you ever fly out?
Not so much. I mean, after the last album cycle, we did a 3-week tour with the Convalescents, hitting mostly the Southeast and the Upper Midwest, and then we did some shows with Reflections of Flesh. I mean, mostly we did kind of like one-off small festivals here and there. The big one was the metal cancer benefit up in Kentucky, out
Oh,
in
wow.
Lebanon Junction near Louisville. Yeah, we headlined that this past year. So that was a Saturday night. So that was pretty cool.
I mean, that must be one of those gigs where it kind of mixed emotion because on one hand, it's to raise money for people that are sick with cancer, but then you kind of have that feeling like, hey, yeah, we're doing something to, help those people.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like I said, Alan Ashbaugh, who runs the organization, straight up fantastic. Probably one of the most honest people I've ever met. Part of this, and one of the things that we did as a bonus is at our merch table, we were selling raffle tickets of an autographed guitar from the band for about $1 a piece.
Oh, wow.
So both years we raised, we helped to raise an additional $1,200.
Wow.
On that raffle for the organization.
And I know one of the hardest things when you're in a band is coming up with a band name. I always love to ask people. So in your case, Blood of Angels, really a metal sounding name, no doubt.
Yes.
How did you come up with that?
Honestly, it was a name that was when I was in my previous band. It was kind of something that was rattling around in my head a little bit that I was going to do as a side project. And then when that band dispersed, I just decided to pursue it as a full thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically kind of on the basis of how I feel about organized religion. I can't stand any of it. I think it's all a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a metaphor, and pretty much all monotheistic major religions do believe in some sort of spiritual angels or things like that. So my idea is kind of like the bleeding of them is like to the end of organized religion. It's metaphorical.
But it's funny though you bring that up because it's funny that a lot of the musicians and people play in different metal bands and stuff. A lot of them are really religious, and the reason I say that's funny is because typically, like, even if you go back to like in the 80s and that people were always talking about, oh, Ozzy Osbourne, he's a devil worshiper, Alice Cooper, they worship the devil, and stuff like this. And if you really sat down and talked to some of these guys, you'd find out no, they were really like
Yeah. I mean, Alice Cooper, I know, is a very Christian man.
yeah.
Yeah. And Ozzy's become that way too. He prays
Even
now.
Geezer Butler, I heard him talk in interviews recently that that's the whole reason that he would always wear a cross, and a lot of the guys in Black Sabbath, he was Sabbath's messing with the church and stuff. He's like, I just want to kind of mess with people's head and have a little fun with it. But he's talking about he's really religious, and yet everybody thinks like Sabbath writes about the devil,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm more interested in the writings of Neil deGrasse Tyson and Stephen Hawking and Richard Dawkins than I am way more about morality from the Bronze Age.
Yeah, I mean, probably you feel that way like a lot of people because nothing against religion, but I think a lot of people that are really into the church and stuff are kind of they preach to others and yet they don't look at how they live their own life.
Oh yeah. I know it's very, very interesting to pass judgment. I mean, yeah. I mean, one of my favorite things is
they'll say stuff like that, like oh, who are you to judge as they're judging you,
Yeah. Well, I mean, isn't one of their things about their savior? The biggest thing is those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. You shouldn't cast judgment unless you want to be judged themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we caught preachers, like heads of evangelical churches, rallying against LGBTQ rights and things like that, and yet they get caught with male prostitutes or I was just getting a massage. Really? Yeah. 3:00 in the morning in this hotel room. That guy was massaging you, right?
Or they'll go the opposite mode of, forgive me, Father, I have sinned.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, so I was curious because the last album, from what I understand, came out around 2019, which is right before the pandemic. Did that cause a lot of trouble for you guys? I mean, as far as being able to do shows, or were you still able to do shows in spite of it?
It did. It really. I mean, we had a couple of tours. We had a U.S. tour we had to cancel. We had a European tour we had to cancel. And basically we. The thing about living in Florida, of course, Florida didn't really shut down like the rest of the country. So we kind of got back out to the local scene and just did shows locally and within the state, and and for fans wanting to come out.
I think that's good, and on your part, because I'm from California and we have a governor that kind of saw things the other way, where
Hmm.
they started to let like live concerts happen. They're telling the bands, well, yeah, okay, you can do live concerts, but you got to be up there on stage and wear a mask. I'm like, can you even imagine that?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, I mean, we did when the clubs first started opening. I mean, we didn't have to wear a mask on stage, while
yeah,
we're on stage, but
you
it
did.
was recommended
Yeah,
that the audience, while being the
yeah.
audience had to, or while you were wandering the club, you had to wear a mask. So, we just put on a mask and did it,
I mean, I think this whole thing with the pandemic, to me, it really made me at least realize how we take things for granted. I mean, I never thought in a million years that the government could stop you from going to see a movie or leaving your house or going to a concert. I think that's why people have much more of appreciation going to live concerts now, because for 3 years we were kind of stopped from doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it did seem like we were under a level of martial law,
Yeah.
not to the full extreme, but definitely
They,
in the reaches of it
I
for
mean,
sure.
they wanted to see how far they could take it. Even in California, where I am, they're going to wait. They're gonna end their emergency powers at the end of February, but they've kept it going this long because they like some of the little power they got.
Yeah, and I witnessed that. I mean, I was there a year ago. I was guest guitaring with another band. We played at the Universal Bar and Grill in
Oh, wow.
LA, and yeah, shot a video at the National Dunes. I did with them,
Okay.
and yeah. I mean, it was just they were just ending the mass restrictions.
Yeah. See.
I mean, we were also supposed to play at the Whiskey at that time, but a few of the band members, didn't get their vaccination, so
You
they
can
wouldn't let the band play because they didn't have the vaccination card. So
There you go.
that's why we ended up at the Bar and Grill. But yeah,
Maybe down
it
the
was a
line you
little
get that
different than
chance.
how we were here.
You get that chance again, maybe down. Well, Aaron, I had a ton of fun getting to know you, talking to you. So I'd love
Same
to
here.
I'd love to do a follow-up interview. I think the interview came out great. It'll probably get posted within the next week or so. I will be sure to let our mutual friend, the Lord of PR, know. Um,
Yeah.
so thanks for doing this. I'll be talking to you. Okay, take care.
Thank you. Yeah, you too. Take care. Have a good one.
Bye bye.